The room was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin like an approaching storm. Earth had been under siege for weeks now, but not by armies. No, it was quieter than that, far deadlier. Its leaders were falling, one by one, each death more confusing than the last. Accidents, they were called. Heart attacks. Car crashes. But the timing was too perfect, the pattern too precise. Someone, or something, was orchestrating this. And no one knew how to stop it. President William Davies sat at the head of the table, his face pale under the harsh lights of the underground bunker. He looked at the men and women around him, each more terrified than the last. They were the last of Earth's leadership. The few who hadn't yet been taken. "What's left?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a dying world. General Martha Caldwell, head of Earth's defenses, cleared her throat, glancing nervously at the screen in front of her. "We've exhausted all our options. Our intelligence agencies can't track them. Our security measures, no matter how advanced, can't stop them. They're ghosts. We don't even know what they look like." "Then what do we do?" asked one of the younger advisors, voice trembling. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to pick us off." The room fell into a heavy silence once again, each person weighing the reality they'd been forced into. The Galactic Empire had sent their best, their elite assassins, to snuff out Earth's independence before it could fully take root. And they were succeeding. But in the corner, a man who had said nothing throughout the entire meeting finally shifted in his seat. His presence was hard to ignore, even though he hadn't spoken. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face hidden beneath a dark hood, he was an anomaly among politicians and military officers. His name was never spoken, not officially. But everyone knew why he was there. When all other defenses had failed, Earth had turned to its darkest weapon. Davies locked eyes with him, and for the first time that night, the president's voice wavered. "Are you ready?" The man, known only in whispers as the Boogeyman, nodded once, slow and deliberate. His eyes, the only part of him visible under the hood, gleamed with a cold, predatory focus. "This won't be easy," General Caldwell added, her voice taut with fear and respect. "They're unlike any threat we've faced before. No human has ever stood against them and survived." The Boogeyman leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "I'm not like other humans." The statement hung in the air, heavy and final. No one dared challenge him. No one wanted to. Davies nodded, the decision made. "Then go. Whatever it takes, make them understand, we will not fall." The Boogeyman rose without a word, his movements fluid and silent, as though the shadows themselves bent around him. The meeting resumed after he left, but the air was thick with dread. They had unleashed something dangerous. And they all knew there would be no going back. Outside the bunker, the world looked deceptively calm. The city, still intact despite the assassins' covert war, gleamed under the moonlight. But there were fewer people on the streets. A quiet fear had settled over the population, even if they didn't fully understand the threat that loomed over them. The Boogeyman moved through the streets like a wraith, blending into the darkness. His steps were soundless, his presence unnoticed by the few civilians who hurried home, their heads down. He had been waiting for this moment. Waiting for Earth to call upon him again. His mind drifted back to the last time he had been unleashed, a different war, a different enemy. But the tactics had been the same: eliminate the threats quietly, one by one, until the enemy was crippled beyond repair. It was what he had been trained to do. What the Empire had trained him to do. But they had made a mistake. They had left him behind. The first target was close. He could feel it in his bones, that old instinct kicking in. The assassins thought they were untouchable, invisible. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. The Boogeyman had been one of them. A whisper of movement caught his attention. High above, on the rooftops, a figure darted between shadows. Alien, graceful, quick. One of the assassins, moving with the precision of a predator. They were hunting their next target, unaware that they had become the prey. The Boogeyman tracked the figure from the ground, his eyes never leaving the rooftops. He moved without hesitation, his path clear. He was faster than them. Smarter. And he had nothing left to lose. The assassin paused, crouching on the edge of a building as they scanned the streets below. A small device in their hand glowed faintly, the data of their next target flickering across the screen. A senator, hiding in a safe house just blocks away. They would never reach it. The boogeyman leapt, scaling the side of the building in seconds, silent as the night itself. He landed behind the assassin without a sound, watching them work, studying their movements. The alien never knew what hit them. In one fluid motion, the boogeyman struck, his blade flashing in the moonlight. The assassin collapsed, their body hitting the rooftop with a muted thud. He knelt beside them, his breath steady as he wiped the blade clean. There was no satisfaction in the kill, only the cold efficiency of a job well done. He checked the device the assassin had dropped, confirming the next target. They were already dead. But this was just the beginning. The boogeyman straightened, his eyes scanning the horizon. There would be more. And he would be waiting. Above him, the clouds shifted, revealing a ship, a sleek, alien craft hovering in the distance. He knew what it meant. They knew he was coming. And now, they were coming for him. The night sky above Earth remained dark and undisturbed, the stars indifferent to the quiet chaos unfolding beneath them. The boogeyman, hidden in the shadows of the city, watched the alien ship glide silently across the sky. It was a hunter, much like him, and its presence sent a clear message. They were aware of him now. And they were prepared to fight back. His fingers tightened around the hilt of his blade, the only sound in the stillness the faint hum of the alien ship's engines as it hovered above the city. This wasn't part of the original plan. The assassins were meant to be ghosts, untouchable. But now, they had changed their tactics. They were hunting him just as he hunted them. For a brief moment, the boogeyman allowed himself to feel something he rarely indulged in: doubt. The Empire's elite were not easily scared. They were trained to dismantle resistance without ever being seen. Yet here they were, deviating from their silent execution of power, acknowledging his presence. It meant they feared him, or, at least, respected his ability to disrupt their plans. He couldn't afford to slow down. He moved swiftly through the city, weaving between the narrow alleys and darkened streets. Every step was calculated, every motion deliberate. His mind remained sharp, pushing aside any personal thoughts or distractions. This was a mission. He was a weapon. The past no longer mattered. As he neared the safe house of the next target, his thoughts shifted to the alien assassins. They operated with the precision of machines, cold and methodical. But they had one fatal flaw: they didn't understand humans. Their superiority complex left them blind to Earth's unique ways of resistance. They didn't understand the lengths to which humanity would go to survive. The boogeyman reached the safe house, a nondescript building hidden among the clutter of the city's outskirts. The front door was cracked open, a faint beam of light spilling into the street. He knew better than to approach the front directly. Slipping around the back, he crouched low, pressing himself against the wall as he peered through a small window. Inside, two figures stood near a table, talking in hushed tones. His next target, a high-ranking military officer, Colonel Sarah Huxley, one of the few left still capable of mounting any real defense for Earth. The second figure was an alien, one of the assassins. But something was wrong. They weren't fighting. They were talking. The boogeyman watched closely, his mind racing. Why would the assassin be meeting with Huxley instead of killing her? Could it be that the enemy wasn't as unified as he had thought? His instincts told him to wait, to watch, to learn. The alien assassin spoke first, its voice soft but firm. "You are running out of time, Colonel. The Empire won't stop. You and your leaders will fall, one by one. This negotiation won't save you." Huxley crossed her arms, her eyes hard. "And why are you here if that's true? Seems to me that you're not so certain of your Empire's infallibility." The assassin's eyes narrowed, a flicker of frustration crossing its alien features. "There are those of us who believe this mission is misguided. Earth poses no real threat to the Empire. We could coexist, but your leaders are too stubborn to see it. They refused to submit, and now they will die for their pride. The boogeyman's breath hitched. A rift in the ranks? That was the kind of information that could shift the tide in Earth's favor. But this alien couldn't be trusted. He knew firsthand how the Empire's agents operated. They were masters of manipulation, twisting truths to suit their needs. Still, this was a complication he hadn't anticipated. Huxley wasn't buying it either. So you've come here to what? Negotiate a truce? You think I'll trust you after all the people your kind have murdered? The assassin's voice was cold, unyielding. I'm offering you a chance to save your world, Colonel. But it won't come cheap. The boogeyman's fingers itched to act, to put an end to this traitorous conversation, but something held him back. There was more at play here than a simple betrayal. The alien's words reeked of desperation, not arrogance. It wasn't here out of confidence. It was here out of necessity. He waited, heart steady, as the alien pulled a small device from its belt, placing it on the table. This is your chance to strike back. I can give you the locations of every assassin currently on Earth. You take them out, and the Empire will be forced to reevaluate its approach. Huxley didn't move, her expression unreadable. Why should I believe anything you say? The alien leaned in, its voice a whisper. Because if you don't, you'll be dead by morning. Silence filled the room. The boogeyman could feel the weight of the moment. Huxley was a soldier, pragmatic, and she knew when to take an opportunity, even if it came from an enemy. But trust was another matter entirely. If she took the deal, it would change everything. Before she could respond, a sound broke the tension. The low, unmistakable hum of an approaching ship, the same one the boogeyman had seen earlier. He cursed under his breath. The Empire wasn't waiting for a deal. They were closing in, and fast. He moved without thinking, slipping through the window and into the room. Huxley and the alien whipped around, shock written across their faces as he stood there, cloaked in shadow. The boogeyman's eyes locked onto the assassin, blade drawn. Negotiations over, he growled. Huxley stepped back, her hand instinctively going for the gun at her side, but she hesitated. Wait, she ordered, her voice firm. If what he says is true, we need him. The boogeyman's gaze never left the alien, the room thick with tension. He could kill it now, end this farce, but something in Huxley's voice made him pause. She was right. If the assassin was telling the truth, they needed that information. But the sound of the ship grew louder. The Empire had arrived, and there was no time to decide. The room was thick with tension, the low hum of the alien ship closing in from above. Time was slipping through their fingers, and every second brought the Empire's forces closer. The boogeyman stood motionless, his blade still drawn, his gaze fixed on the alien assassin. In the dim light of the safe house, shadows danced across his face, hiding the battle raging inside his mind. Talk, the boogeyman growled, his voice low and dangerous. The alien hesitated, its reptilian eyes flicking toward Huxley before settling back on the boogeyman. I can give you everything. The locations of every operative on this planet. But you need to stop them from coming in here and killing us all. The boogeyman's hand tightened on his blade. Trusting an assassin of the Galactic Empire was akin to signing a death warrant. Yet Huxley stood between them, her posture stiff but her eyes calculating. She was no fool, and neither was he. You think the Empire cares about you? The boogeyman shot back. They'll kill you too, just like they did to me. The alien's eyes narrowed. We don't have time for this. They're closing in. You want information, or do you want to die with that blade in your hand? Huxley glanced at the boogeyman, her expression unreadable. We need that intel, she said firmly. We can't win this without knowing where they are. The boogeyman stared hard at her, then at the assassin. His instincts screamed at him to end the alien's life then and there, to wipe away the threat it posed. But a part of him, buried deep beneath the layers of training and violence, whispered that Huxley was right. They needed this chance. And if there was any possibility that the alien was telling the truth, they had to take it. His mind raced, weighing the risks. The Empire's ship hovered just above them, a silent predator ready to strike. In a few moments, the situation would escalate beyond his control. He had always been a weapon, designed to strike without hesitation, to eliminate threats before they could fester. But now, for the first time, hesitation gripped him. "Fine," he finally said, lowering his blade but not sheathing it. "But if you're lying, you'll kill me." "I know," the alien interrupted, its voice sharp. "I'm not lying. We're not all mindless killers. Some of us see the bigger picture." The boogeyman's eyes narrowed, the words striking a chord deep within him. He'd once been like this assassin, believing in the Empire's cause, a weapon of their will. But they had betrayed him, left him to die. He'd survived, but the scars were more than physical. "Give me the locations," Huxley demanded, stepping forward, her eyes never leaving the alien's. "We don't have time for games." The alien retrieved a small data chip from its belt, placing it on the table. "This contains everything. Every assassin currently stationed on Earth. It's encrypted, but I'll give you the passcode, once we're out of here alive." The boogeyman's jaw clenched. "You expect us to take you with us?" The alien nodded, not an ounce of fear in its gaze. "You'll need me if you want to survive what's coming." Before anyone could respond, a sudden crash echoed through the building, the sound of metal bending under pressure. The ship outside had made its move. The safe house trembled as if the air itself had thickened with dread. The boogeyman moved without thinking, grabbing the data chip and slipping it into his belt. "They're here," he said, voice clipped. "We move now." Huxley snapped into action, grabbing her weapon and motioning to the door. "There's an escape tunnel beneath the building. We use that, head underground." The alien assassin didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head, listening to something neither the boogeyman nor Huxley could hear. "They've sent in a retrieval squad. We won't make it to the tunnel in time." The boogeyman cursed under his breath, eyes scanning the room for options. He couldn't let the Empire take the assassin, not when they had valuable intel. But fighting their way out of a full squad of elite soldiers would be suicide. "We'll make time," he said, determination in his voice. "Move." As if on cue, the door to the safe house exploded inward, and the first of the retrieval squad entered. Tall, armored figures with advanced weaponry, their movements efficient and deadly. The boogeyman acted on instinct, hurling himself forward and closing the distance between him and the first soldier before they could react. His blade sliced through the air, cutting through the soldier's throat in a fluid motion. Huxley fired off 2 shots, taking down another before she ducked behind cover. The alien assassin grabbed a weapon from the fallen soldier and moved with the grace of a predator, covering their flank. The retrieval squad was relentless, their numbers overwhelming. But the boogeyman was faster, more brutal. Every move he made was calculated, efficient, designed to kill. He danced between the attackers, his blade a blur of motion. For a moment, it seemed like they might make it out, until a sharp pain shot through his side. He stumbled, vision blurring as he glanced down. A thin, glowing line of blood ran down his ribs, the telltale sign of an energy weapon. One of the soldiers had managed to get a shot off. The pain was intense, but he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand. He couldn't fall here. Not yet. "Get to the tunnel!" Huxley shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The boogeyman staggered but kept moving, covering Huxley and the alien as they made their way toward the escape hatch. The retrieval squad pressed in, but they were thinning out, their numbers dwindling with every strike. They reached the tunnel entrance, Huxley yanking the cover open. The alien assassin slipped inside first, followed by Huxley. The boogeyman was the last to drop down, his body screaming in protest as he moved. But as soon as he hit the ground, he knew something was wrong. The tunnel was empty. He turned, eyes narrowing. "Where's the backup?" The alien assassin didn't answer. Instead, it turned toward him, eyes gleaming with something the boogeyman hadn't seen before. Not fear. Not desperation. Triumph. Before he could react, the tunnel's exit slammed shut, trapping them in the darkness. The air in the tunnel was thick, the silence between them heavier than the darkness that swallowed them whole. The boogeyman's senses were sharp, every instinct screaming at him that something was off. His eyes adjusted quickly, taking in the small, enclosed space. Huxley was tense, her hand on her weapon, while the alien assassin stood still, watching him with an unreadable expression. The triumph in its eyes hadn't faded. "What have you done?" The boogeyman's voice was a low growl, the edge of danger clear. The assassin's lips curled into a faint smile. "I told you we don't all agree with the Empire's methods, but that doesn't mean I'm on your side." Huxley shifted, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Then why help us? Why hand over the data chip? To survive." The alien's voice was calm, almost too calm for the situation. "And to win." Before the boogeyman could react, a low hum filled the tunnel, the sound vibrating through the walls. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of an energy shield powering up. The boogeyman's heart rate spiked, his hand instinctively going to his blade. He shot a quick glance at Huxley, whose eyes widened in realization. "We're trapped," she muttered. The alien assassin took a step back, its smile widening. "The retrieval squad wasn't just after me. They were after you. You were never the target, Boogeyman. You were the bait." The boogeyman's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. The Empire had orchestrated everything, every assassination, every move, to draw him out. He wasn't just their enemy. He was their unfinished business. They wanted him back, dead or alive. He stepped forward, towering over the assassin, his blade gleaming even in the dim light. "And you're working for them now?" The assassin didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "I work for myself. The Empire wants you, Boogeyman, and they'll stop at nothing to get you. I just made sure I'm not in the line of fire when they do." The hum of the energy shield grew louder, the walls of the tunnel vibrating as the shield sealed them in, trapping them with no way out. Huxley's voice was tight with anger. "You've doomed us all." "Not all of you," the assassin replied smoothly, eyes darting to Huxley. "The Empire doesn't care about you. You're collateral damage, a distraction. But him." It gestured toward the boogeyman. "They need him. They've been trying to clean up the mess they made when they left him behind." The boogeyman's chest tightened as memories he had long buried began to resurface. His training, his missions, the moment the Empire abandoned him as if he were nothing more than a faulty weapon. He had been their finest tool, their most lethal asset, and when they thought he was no longer useful, they discarded him. But he didn't die. He survived. And now, they wanted to finish what they started. "I won't go back," he said, his voice low but full of conviction. The assassin tilted its head, its smile fading into something more calculating. "They're not giving you a choice." In an instant, the tunnel lit up, the energy shield crackling to life around them. The boogeyman's muscles tensed as he felt the heat radiating from the barrier, the walls closing in, leaving them with no exit. Huxley cursed under her breath, her hand gripping her weapon tightly, though they both knew there was no fighting their way out of this. "How do we turn it off?" Huxley demanded, her voice laced with urgency. The assassin shrugged. "You don't. That's the beauty of it. You've been outplayed, outmaneuvered. All that's left is for the retrieval team to come and collect what's theirs." The boogeyman's eyes narrowed, his mind racing through possibilities. There was no way he was going to let the Empire take him, not again. But with the shield in place and the exit sealed, their options were limited. "There's always a way out," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The assassin raised an eyebrow. "Is there? Because it looks to me like the Empire has thought of everything this time." A sudden flash of pain shot through the boogeyman's side, where the energy weapon had grazed him earlier. He gritted his teeth, pushing the pain aside. This was not the time to falter. Huxley looked at him, her brow furrowed in concern, but he gave her a sharp nod. "We're not dead yet," he said, his voice steady. The hum of the shield grew louder, the oppressive heat pressing against them from all sides. The boogeyman could feel his heartbeat quicken, not out of fear but out of the sheer focus required to stay ahead of the game. "There's always a flaw," he said, his eyes locking onto the alien assassin. "Every system, every trap, every plan, There's always a flaw. The assassin chuckled softly. You think you can outthink the Empire? They built you. They know how you operate. They've accounted for your every move. The boogeyman's eyes darted around the tunnel, scanning every inch of the space. The walls, the ceiling, the shield, everything had been meticulously designed to contain them. But he wasn't just a product of the Empire's training anymore. He had learned to adapt, to see things they couldn't. His gaze landed on a small panel embedded in the far wall, barely visible through the glow of the energy shield. It was faint, but it was there, an access point. Huxley followed his gaze, her eyes widening in realization. Is that? It's the control panel for the shield, the boogeyman confirmed, his voice grim. But getting to it won't be easy. The shield crackled, sending another wave of heat through the tunnel, and time was running out. The retrieval team would be on them soon, and if they didn't find a way to deactivate the shield, they'd be sitting ducks. The boogeyman stepped forward, his eyes locked on the control panel, calculating the distance and the risk. It would take perfect timing, flawless execution, exactly the kind of challenge he had been trained for. He was no longer just an asset or a weapon. He was something more. Stay close, he said to Huxley, his voice calm but filled with purpose. We're getting out of here. But before he could take another step, the tunnel rumbled, and the ground beneath them shifted. A low, mechanical whine echoed through the space, and then, without warning, the ceiling began to collapse.